All right. Good morning, everyone. Brad Roltkin here with the Fresno Bitcoin and Cryptocurrency Investors Group. Today, what are we looking at? May 6th, 2023. Today, we're going to be talking about cryptos, CBDCs, or central bank digital currencies, and banking collapses. This is kind of a discussion that we've had quite a bit at our in-person meetings at me and Ed's here in Fresno. But I thought with all of it in the news, it would be something interesting to talk about. And this is kind of one of those areas that we could get into, debates, Bitcoin's better, Ethereum's better, this and that, back and forth. But I don't want to get into a battle, so to speak, but hopefully we can kind of share what we've learned and maybe our thoughts of why we got into crypto. Maybe that's because we feared a banking collapse, or we wouldn't mind having an alternative payment method to buy our groceries, gas, and weekly needs and that kind of thing. Or maybe it's something we can speculate on a little bit. If the banking collapse and Bitcoin goes up 10x, who knows? And then obviously the CBDCs are something that I think most of us agree are a little bit scary and something we want to avoid as much as possible. I've been very glad to see a few states and governors, come out against them already. So I didn't think we'd see that this quickly, but so that was encouraging to me. So I'll just kind of get started with part of why I got into crypto, or at least why I think I got into crypto back then. Back in probably 2008, 2009, after the whole banking collapse, I kind of got my eyes open to, the Federal Reserve, how that works, and the fractional banking system and all that. And so a few years later, when I don't know, I heard about Bitcoin or cryptos or that kind of thing, it's like, hey, that could be a good alternative way to, engage in commerce with each other, should we have a problem. So part of the reason I got into it was because I didn't believe the current fiat banking system had a super long future. I mean, a lot of people thought that it would collapse, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, that kind of thing. So I still wonder how we've gotten this far. But that was part of my reason. Also, I've been into computers and, tech for years and years. And the ability to mine and be involved with the cryptos that way was kind of intriguing to me. And, make a couple bucks, that was fun too. But that's kind of why I got into it. So let me answer. Okay. What is a CBDC? So that stands for a central bank digital currency, which would be the Federal Reserve, here in the US, or Bank of England, whatever, basically coming out with their own digital currency or a coin. I don't want to call it a crypto because most of us think of cryptos as, decentralized, no governing control, that kind of thing. Like if somebody wanted to stop Bitcoin, you're not going to go to Bitcoin's office and serve a subpoena, or that kind of thing. But what they're talking about with the CBDCs is, literally the Fed just launching their own coin and saying, okay, we're going away from the dollar, turn in all your physical dollars at your bank, and what we're going to transact with are these CBDCs. And guess what? They can track, every candy bar we buy, or every unhealthy meal we consume, or, maybe there's some purchase that, is not deemed proper by the authorities, and they decide to shut down our accounts for that week, or permanently, or who knows. So that's kind of the big fear there. And unfortunately, there's a lot of talk about these things from multiple countries. So at least it's getting awareness that way. So yeah, it looks like Michael jumped in here. Oh, we got a bunch of people jumped in here. That's good. Let me get my other screen up so I can actually see people here. There we go. Oh, good. Hey, Elaine, welcome. Chris, good to have you on. Ken, Michael, Susan. Okay. Oh, nice, Chris. I didn't start a Google Doc. Chris, why don't you jump in? Tell us about that site while I get a I'm going to start a new Google Doc and share it here so we can start tracking some of those links like we normally do.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Hey,
Today
actually,
is my
you
today
know,
is my 2-year anniversary for crypto.
oh wow, you are a little, yeah, you've done a lot in that short time.
I
But
am.
before you go, let me do another couple housekeeping things I forgot about and just want to kind of get in there. So um, we had our last in-person event last week. It actually worked out way the calendar and everything with Eric. He showed us about how to run a Bitcoin and a Lightning node, and I actually gave him a hard drive to put the Bitcoin um, ledger, shall we say, is the best way to put it, I guess. And so I'm going to start running one. But he offered to kind of do the process again for anybody who's interested and actually walk through and, install it on your laptop or um, a Raspberry Pi or that kind of thing. So if you're interested in doing that at a future in-person meeting, let me know and we'll coordinate that with maybe bringing a little bit extra equipment or that kind of thing. But the theory is that, we probably all have an extra laptop or some old, Raspberry Pi or something we could run this on, consume very low power and, contribute to the network stability, that kind of thing. Then some of us have done, got started with EasyBot, which we talked about last month. I ran into kind of a weird quirk I just wanted to share with you real quick. I've been trading Cardano and Matic, and for some reason I got a little bit more Matic than the bot realized, and it went to trade, and it was like a tenth or a hundredth of a coin. What I had was short what they thought I had, so it stopped the bot in trading. And so usually I had that problem with the bot stopping because I ran out of funds on a purchase, but this was actually on a sell transaction. So if you guys have any issues with the bot stopping, take a look and see if for some reason the bot thought you had or thought, yeah, I thought you had a little bit more of one coin than it thought you did. So to solve that problem, I just went in manually and bought like $10 worth of that coin. So there'd be enough there to trade, and then I'll kind of figure it out later. But just wanted to pass that along since I ran into that. And then I was thinking about doing another meeting once in a while in addition to this, just to kind of compare notes on what we were doing with EasyBot for those of us that jumped into it. If you guys are interested in that, let me know. If I get feedback, I'll do it. If nobody wants to, then we won't, kind of thing. Yeah, so then our next meeting in person is going to be on the 21st. It's basically 2 weeks from tomorrow, to celebrate Bitcoin Pizza Day, which coordinates just about perfectly there. And I think that's about it. So yeah, I wanted to bring those to everybody's attention while we were here live. Chris, go ahead and bring us up on the CBDC tracker, and while I get that Google Doc going. There he is.
So
Yeah.
I was just trying to bring it up on the screen here. For some reason, it, of course, always fails when you try to do it on the actual computer. I have it on my other computer, but I'm just looking at the. Oh, I see why I did. It's a CBDC. One second. Oh wait.
Yeah, and you can share now. I stopped sharing,
Okay.
so you can jump in there.
There we go. So I've actually shared this before on our little get-togethers, and this is what I use to. Can everyone see that screen?
Yeah, we got it now.
This is what I've used for several months, almost 6 months, just to monitor the progress of where we are in the world as far as CBDCs are concerned. And if you're interested, it's cbdctracker.org. And if you want to know more about it, there's a white paper. It's up here on the right side in the corner. You go to the white paper. You can actually learn about what they are and who they are and what they are all about. and you can see that they were put together just to track and monitor the CBDCs. And if you want to learn more about CBDCs, they're digital currencies, not cryptocurrencies. And they actually talk about that, and they talk about what they really are. They're unlike, it says, unlike well-known cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin or Ether. It's basically a electronic money that the multiple countries are trying to put together. And you can read more about this in the white paper. They talk about what this is. They say that it's interoperability and they're also cross-border payments for 2.0, but it really is a way of, they say it's convenience, but it's more than that. There's a lot of negativism that goes with it, primarily with this programmability part. There are countries in the world right now that are using uh, electronic money. And as Brad had talked about, the actual, there's a lot of negative that go along with the programmability about whether or not um, agendas that can be kind of programmed into it, whether or not they can actually make it so your money stops. They have a deadline on it. You have to use by or you have to use for, specifically for, uh, I don't know, kind of reminds me of those stamps where food stamps where you can only buy certain foods and you can't buy alcohol. So it's kind of like that where that's where they can program your money, your digital currency. And if you're, you know, meeting for certain thresholds or you're, so a lot of people talk about the negativism of it, but I think there's obviously positives to it, easy access. I think it all starts in the United States with the upcoming, uh, what's it called? The Fed system. Anybody remember what that is?
Oh, the Fed now?
Fed now. That's exactly it. I think that's where it starts. And it's a direct link between the individual and the federal government. So when there is another pandemic or whatever, and they need to get money out to the individual, everyone will have an account with the Fed. And I think that's where the CBDC is. The Fed now will eventually be able to have the direct relationship through the Fed now with the CBDCs, and that's. But anyways, going back, you can learn more about the CBDCs in the actual automation and programmability of these. They go to it pretty in depth. What the goal is basically what this website's all about. If you look at right here, you see a process where the countries are. Countries are either in a research or they looked into it and they're like, no, we're going to cancel it. That's where, there's not very many of those. They're researching it. Majority of them right now are in research. Then you have the countries that are piloting, actually engaging in doing it, or developing and launching it. So if we go back to the actual, you can look, and right now we have it showing all right now. So you only have like one country, Ecuador, who said, no, we're not doing it. They will eventually, but they're not doing it now. They apparently canceled it, and it actually tells you which one they dinero electronico, and so you can find out more about that. All you have to do is put your little cursor or over with the country and see what they're actually looking up and what they're doing. If you want to find more what this is, you just click it, and it'll take you to and tell you more about that and then give you more information. Here's the United States, US Federal Reserve, 2022 research. They're looking at wholesale because there's two different types, right? There's wholesale, but see, I think that's why if you go back, there's two of them because there's both retail, and then there's wholesale. So, and then there's various projects, and this Project Hamilton, I think I remember reading it started around November of last year, where they have six of the major banks actually doing a digital currency. That's in the United States. But if you go over here,
So
proof of
hold on,
con.
Chris. Chris,
Go ahead.
maybe explain a little more on the retail versus wholesale, where that would be used, or
Well, I think, and I am not the expert. Believe me, I'm not the expert on this. So do your own research. But the retail is you and I. We are. It's in the wholesale would be the banks, right? So if you have, and this is only from what I understand, like for example, XRP and cross-border payments. I think originally it was supposed to be wholesale only, and now you have individuals who actually own XRP. So at some point, there's speculation that they might offer at a higher value to get you to sell your XRP. So that way it goes back to the banks, because it really was geared towards the wholesale and the banks having it versus the individual having it. So retail is just like retail stores. It's where the public has access to and can hold the cryptocurrency, as opposed to the major banks or the major companies actually having the wholesale part of it. It's like the Costco versus the retail, the store. Like I said, I am not the expert on this, and I would strongly just encourage you to do your own research. And I think a lot of these kind of sites right here will be able to help you understand it more. But this is what I've used to just monitor and see where we are. And you can actually go back in time, if I remember correctly, to look
Oh yeah, cool.
where we were and where we are, and be able to, and then it tells you, where these are. And from what I understand, and this is only from watching YouTube and doing my own research, there's been some countries, I should say, in Africa, who actually have implemented CBDCs, and there has been negative responses and people not wanting to be using them because, again, it's a tracker. It will track what you spend, and it will track, it's just another, it's not private at all. And that's one of the reasons why cryptos like Monero have been popular, because they see where the governments are going with this trackability. And like I said, do your own research. China's a big one right now, where they are actually using this environmental, where you if you are not using your digital money correctly in their eyes, they can actually pause your account.
Right, right. And
So
that's,
that's one
yeah,
of the dangers, and that's one of the reasons why Governor DeSantis in Florida is saying we don't want CBDCs in Florida, and that's across the U.S. where you have a lot of negative, but the government does, because it wants one easy or direct access with the individual, but it also wants that um,
Control.
optics, I guess you could say. They want to be able to see what you're spending your money on, and they want to be able to have that programmability. And that's kind
yeah,
of scary in my mind, but and I think a lot of people feel the same way. But that's just my take on it. And like I said, do your own research. But in this, you can come down here and see what different countries are looking at as far as their digital currency. Again, it's not cryptocurrency; it's using the same kind of technology, in my opinion, but they're calling it something different.
yeah. Go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say, Chris, you were talking about, the next, um, what do we just have, pandemic there, and they send you money. Well, the thing is they'll be able to remove that money if they don't like what you're spending it on. That's why, for me, these things are really dangerous, and that's why Satoshi, whoever that is, came up with Bitcoin in the beginning, because it's decentralized. Once you centralize it to a bank or a power, then you no longer have control over that. I mean, they do. No matter what they're going to tell you, oh, it's because we could put the money in your bank. Baloney, they could put the money in your bank right now in 5 seconds if they want to. They don't need this, but they can't control it the same way they can. They can't control your bank account the same way they can these, because these are electronic connected directly to them, to their servers. And when they want that money, boom, it comes right back. But Chris, this is really great information. Thank you for sharing this today.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I just do my own little research, and I it concerns me, and I'm sure it concerns a lot of people, and it's sort of front and center as far as the news is concerned. And as we get closer to the Fed now in July, we're going to see what this can and can't do.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Chris, thanks for sharing that. Hey, Brandy, do you have any comments? We're on a little early with Brandy, and he was sharing how he's doing his own crypto project. So he's probably got a little more under the hood experience than most of the rest of us. Any thoughts, Brandy?
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with all the points that you guys brought up. CBDC being, it's centralized and, a certain government agency. As a matter of fact, I can attest to the power, to the power of someone being on that level or layer 2 operation of the cryptocurrency space. Like, I have a control of a layer 2, which means if, let's say, if Brad has an account with me, I can pause his deposits, I can pause his withdrawal. So CBDC in essence has that power minus the option, because at least if it's a layer 2 and it actually has a blockchain behind it, if you are, playing by the rules and manage to take out your cryptocurrency from the layer 2 system and put it back in the blockchain, then you can be on your own. But if it's only a CBDC without an option to get out of it, because if it actually has its own decentralized blockchain, then you can download the source code, compile it, and then you have your own wallet, and you don't care with everybody else. You can send wallet to wallet, peer to peer. But I don't think CBDC will give us access to a source code or to a decentralized wallet, because that's exactly the opposite of what they want to do.
Right.
They're doing that already right now. It'll just make it a lot easier.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's what we all fear. Yeah, Chris mentioned that there were some positives, which, I'm sure there are, but to me, it just the negatives outweigh it, 400 to 1 kind of thing. So I'm sure we could get a lot of those positives on another option, whether that's a layer 2 like Lightning Network on on Bitcoin or something like that. Yeah. Was it, Chris, was it Ecuador you said they gave up, or was it
Ecuador.
Ecuador? Okay.
It was Ecuador. On the note of positive, I think there is a positive. But the governments across the board, including the U.S., aren't seeing it, and that cryptocurrency is already here. They could already be using it, but they don't want that. They don't want to acknowledge that because they want the control. They want the power, and it's in the name, central, right? Cryptocurrency isn't central. If you acknowledge that cryptocurrency is the way, then they're acknowledging they're giving up their own power.
Right, and that's the last thing they want to do.
Exactly. That's my point. So
Yeah.
there is an answer already, but they just don't want to see it. In fact, they're pushing cryptocurrency away out of the United States, when in fact the whole world's, in a lot of ways, a lot of countries are acknowledging it and actually bringing it in, and then they're, look at Venezuela or whatever, they're accepting it, and what's going to happen? The whole world's going to accept it, and the United States is going to be the last, I don't know. It's the whole dollar thing. Don't get me started on that.
Well, that's kind of that's kind of what we're talking about, and it kind of, we become isolationists when, and that's kind of what's been happening, which is crazy. It's like, yeah. Anyway, I think somebody else wanted to jump in there.
Yeah, I was just jumping in. I had a couple things that came to mind, and the first thing I was wondering if Chris had any knowledge on, or anybody else, was El Salvador is the only country that I know of right now that fully accepts Bitcoin as an official payment, right? Although there are other smaller entities, but is there anything with these CBDCs that is happening in El Salvador? And then the second thing that I wanted to know is, you know what? I'll just go, let me do that one first, and then I'll come back to it.
Okay, I'm not sure if Chris had an answer. I would think that they would probably be one of the last ones to do the CBDCs if they're already started with it with Bitcoin. I mean,
well, I was just asking that because they are, fully immersed in Bitcoin for more than a year now, right? And they gave away X number of dollars to all their citizens, I think is what, 25,000 or something like that. I don't remember the number exactly, but I'm just kind of wondering, that flies in the face of these CBDCs. This is a sovereign entity that now uses Bitcoin and this is a model to the rest of the world as to what it could possibly do, although it's not necessarily in the right hands. But anyhow, it's the other thing. But and Chris, I do agree with you on the dollar thing. I mean, that's a whole nother subject on its own.
It really is.
What's happening with China and the Brazil and these other BRIC countries or whatever, Russia trying to put together, using the yuan instead of the dollar. That's a whole nother fish to fry. But tell me anything, your thoughts on El Salvador,
So
if any.
like I said, I am not the expert on this, but I do know that there's recognition, but there's also legal adoption. And I think right now as a country, there are a lot of countries that are close to it, but I think El Salvador is like the main one, right? But it's not exclusively. It's not just exclusive Bitcoin. It's recognized, obviously, dollar and also Bitcoin. But see, I think here's the thing: the countries want to get away from the dollar, and so you have like IMF saying, no, 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 you need to get back on in line with everyone else and get on the dollar, and that's the dollar pushing the IMF to go around and be sort of the whipping, in my opinion. But I think El Salvador is the only one right now as far as legally. Now, there's a lot of countries recognizing it and then also, mining it. We find that there are countries actually mining for that very purpose, but they don't come out and say it. But
Sure.
as far as legally, I think it's only El Salvador
Right.
right now, publicly.
That's what I'm saying. They're the only sovereign nation that it is official tender of El Salvador. Bitcoin is, and other places to accept. You had mentioned South Africa. Or Africa in general. There's huge amounts of Bitcoin use in Africa because these people have no banks per se, right? I mean, banks aren't as prevalent as they are in the US or Europe or Asia, places like that, some places in Asia. And so this helps them. And this kind of goes back to where I think one of the things they're going to do, and maybe I've already heard it, so that's why I'm thinking it is, that the powers that be are saying, well, one of the benefits of the CBDCs is what we can do for you and what we can do for people that don't have the means, people who are in need or people who are poor or people who are impoverished or whatever. And that will be the mechanism through which they get it embedded. And then once they have it in there, then it's like a virus. It comes in or a Trojan horse. It all comes in real nice and pretty. And then later on, you're chain linked to your house.
So according to CoinMarketCap, I just pulled it up on my other computer. Central African Republic accepts BTC as legal tender, and El Salvador. Those are the only two. Now it does predict the next countries. It says Paraguay, Venezuela, Anguilla. I'm not really sure if I said that one right. Ukraine, but these are predicted. So they're not even. There's only two. It's Central African Republic and El Salvador.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It's an extremely small amount of people or countries that are
But
doing.
you know what? It only takes one to get it started.
It's got to start somewhere. Yeah.
I agree. If this is one of those things where when you have the first major, like a G7 or a G20 country that accepts it, right? And then that'll be sort of a waterfall event at that point in time. I think others will start to jump in because they don't want to miss the boat. But somebody's got to be brave enough to do it. And so far, it's just El Salvador and some country in Africa that I've never even heard of.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I mean, they're changing all the time in certain parts of the world, the names of the country.
Yeah. Brandy, you had your hand up a minute ago. Did you want to jump in?
I was trying to recall what question I had, but
Oh.
yeah, I guess it's just about finding a resource. I haven't really dug into the details as far as how FedNow works, or are they like developing their own own blockchain, or is it just like basically a database? And I guess the question that I have for any form of CBDC is will they inflate it just how they're inflating our current system? Like it's a different story back before we held silver and gold. Like all you have to do is look at the history, and you can tell that when silver and gold is part of money, we don't see all these crazy stuff. Like the market decides for itself. So what are they going to do with this CBDC? Are they like, okay, let's create a CBDC? Because I think if I'm the government, I'll say, I'll create a CBDC. I have, I don't know, 100 tons of gold. which is sitting in Fort Knox. I'll tie that up with that CBDC to boost confidence. But I don't know. I don't think we have that. Will we still expect inflation, even if it's 2%, you know? And that's just a thought I want to put out there.
Well,
Yeah.
if I could kind of just reflect on that, or to give my nickel on that, and that is that this is an electronic thing that they're just making up. And so they make up dollars every single day, billions of dollars every single day. So are they going to inflate that at some point in time? You betcha. I mean, you know, so it's like, well, we're going to start out with $1 trillion, and oh gosh, we need another 2. Bingo, there we go. Hey, Bob, would you go ahead and key that in there? Thank you so much. Now we got
Yeah.
$3 trillion, you know, and that's the sad part of what that is. That's why things like Bitcoin are so critically important. There's only 21 million of them. Okay, you can't make any more. You can't make any less. It is what it is. It's the number that it is, and that's why it is what it is. And eventually, I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime, because I'm 97, although you can't really tell. But anyhow, is that, you know, it eventually will take over, because the inflation of, or the, what are we, $31 trillion now in debt?
Only.
Yeah, only. You know, I mean, I see 50 or 60 trillion somewhere down the road.
Probably more.
Well,
Yeah,
there's-
there's a
when you
bunch
put
of
in all the liabilities that they have, you put in what they have under Social Security, for example, you don't even want to know what that number is. I mean, you're talking like 11 figures, 12 figures then, you know. I mean, it's scary. That's why nobody wants to talk about it. Because if all of a sudden they said it's, you know, like $350 trillion, I mean, everybody would literally,
would freak out. Yeah.
yeah.
That's only 31 trillion coins, right? 31 1 trillion coins.
Yeah. But okay, let's take a step back, and where do you think we go from here? You know, like, what do the next steps look like? For example, you know, we started having these banking collapses. Do we have a few more? And, you know, we really lose confidence in the system. And then all of a sudden they say, oh, we've got a new system. It's the CBDCs, and it's going to be good because of X, Y, Z, R, and Q, and N. And everybody says, yay, we're saved by our government. And we get switched over to that. You know, is that part of the, you know, transition process that, you know, we as the citizens aren't going to buy into something new unless the something old that we're used to breaks? You know, what do you guys think?
Can I say something?
Please.
I think we're in the wild, wild west again of money, just like historically when we went from gold chunks, you know, passing when it was decentralized, we spent money with gold nuggets. The government came in and said, oh, whoa, 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 we're going to centralize it, and mint money because then we can control it. We're in the cryptocurrency world again, or which would be technically, crypto is the new gold. It has its own ability to, it's got a defined market. It's 21 million. And so now the government has to come in and say, okay, we're going to control it and we're going to do it our way. And I don't think that it's going to settle out until, like, there's going to be the people who just jump on board and follow the ship. They're just going to follow the government and do what, you know, they're told, because they don't know anything about cryptocurrency, and it has a bad reputation for being, you know, dark webby kind of stuff, even though that's really what cash is for. But let's be real. And but we've just gone through a pandemic where, you know, I've said this, like, okay, money, the paper money, the coin money, Brad, we talked about this the other night.
Right.
It's filthy. We've just lived through a pandemic where we're obsessed with germs now. Money is on its way out. It has to go. We have to replace it because nobody wants to touch money anymore. Nobody feels the same way about holding dollars and coins, because it's potentially deadly with disease. And so, but what the part about poverty and like, we're using this system I got into cryptocurrency because of the ability for cryptocurrency to elevate women around the world out of poverty without their money being controlled by solely men in their families or their communities. Because in a lot of places in the world, women aren't even allowed to hold money that they earn. And the women who hold money themselves use 85% of it on their children. So that is a humongously wonderful social use of money when it's in the hands of women, but in many places in the world, money is never allowed to be in the hands of women. I know this is going down like the social chain corner of it. However, what I worry about is, and I didn't understand I thought they were gonna like adopt a Bitcoin, like in my optimistic world, like, oh yeah, we're all just gonna shift right over to cryptocurrency. This is kind of new for me to think the US will have its own digital money that's controlled, because that's horrifying to me, because it's the same, it's worse than having fiat currency, because nobody knows how much cash I have in my pocket or my wallet, but if it's programmable and digital, now they know every single thing about it, and that's terrible for all people, but it's even worse for people who live in poverty, because this is how we control poverty and we control power. So anyway, my mind's just kind of like on speed dial, but I'm thinking about how we're in this. It's gonna be wild west for I think a long period of time until this settles. There's gonna be a lot of fighting over it.
Yeah, let's define in your mind long period, because that's.
Oh, I think it's gonna be 20 years. I think we're
Okay.
gonna do this for easily 20 years, because there's gonna be people, I think, like me, and probably like maybe even you guys might even be more, but I feel very much like digging my feet into the ground. I want only money in cryptocurrency and decentralized money versus, or I want to, is it Brandy? I want to know that I can, okay, give me the money, but I want to be able to move it immediately into something else without it being tracked. And not because I want to, go do illegal things with it, but it's nobody's business what I do with my money. And so I think it's going to be a 20-year thing. I think my little Charlie, my granddaughter who was just popped up, I think that her entire adult life will be using decentralized, digital currency. We're already prepping everybody for it. We already do Venmo. It's attached to a bank, but we're massaging people into the comfort of digital money. Cash App,
Right.
Zelle, we're already like just warming people up to this idea. What we haven't told people yet is, oh, but you can do that without a bank. And then when like the mass population, I think when they start to realize you can do it with a bank or without a bank, there's going to be oh no, I only want to do it with a bank because I trust banks or the government. And then there's going to be the other ones like, oh, I only want to do it without a bank. I only want to do it without the government. Right. And so I think that's where the fight's going to be. And I think I did just see, that's where the new battle is going to be. It's going to be the new, dichotomy of we want it to be controlled because that's the only way to like stop crime, or we don't want it to be controlled because that elevates our freedom.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I think we're in a war with money, and it's going to take 20 years to fight it out.
That's what I was talking about a few minutes ago. It's going to take quite a long time for this to work out, because if you imagine that the US dollar is no longer the central currency in the world, what does that mean to this country?
Yeah,
And then whatever, all the influences that we have, all the money that we give to others and all that kind of stuff. But has anybody else read? I've read and I've heard that one of the things about these CBDCs is that when the government, US government, has their one that they're going to put out, let's say that just for a round number, that you have $10,000 in cash or whatever in your bank. And you're thinking, well, they're going to trade your dollars for 10,000 CBDCs. No, what they're going to do, and this is what I've heard, is that whatever you have 10,000, they're going to give you 5,000 in CBDCs or 7,500 in that. And then somebody who only has $1,000, they're going to give them 5,000 CBDCs. That sounds a little bit like socialism to me, but I've heard that. That's one of the fears on this. Now, I don't know if anybody else has heard that, but that's one of the things that the transfer from CBDCs and cash, whatever you have, you know, to be on that CBDC system only and no cash, like you're talking about. When they do that and they transfer that and they're taking all the cash out of society, all the physical cash out of society, they've got to remove all that. So if you've got $1 million, they only give you 750,000 of that. And then they take that other 250 that you had and give it to other people. I mean, and you know, we get back to this equity thing, but again, another subject altogether. But I'm
then
saying that's
that
patently unfair because I work hard. I'm sure Brandy and Dr. B and Chris and Brad, we all work hard for our money. And I'm not trying to make money. I'm not trying to bring other people down by making money. I mean, I own my own business. So I've earned that for me and my family, just like all of you have. Why is it that I should get less or you should get less because the government, anyhow.
At the end of the day, though, the government just controls it, right? Like,
right.
If it's $1 million and I keep 750,000 and they give 250,000 of my million away, if they're doing that, they're still in control of, they're managing my money, which is not where we want the government.
Oh, that 250 is no longer yours. That's other people.
No, I know. Yeah, but I mean,
that's socialism. I mean,
the value of any of those, now what are they, CBDCs? The value of those, just like a dollar bill, are now elevated and depleted by the government. And so whenever the government takes your money and redistributes it, we're screwed because they devalue our money, which is why when we have Bitcoin and there's a limited amount, or when we have a pile of gold nuggets, it can't be depleted by the government. It can't be maneuvered or manipulated by the government. It's only manipulated by a market, the supply and the demand. And when we live in that world, like, that's the world I want my granddaughter to be in. And then we can all decide, I want to share it or I don't, or I want to do this or I want to do that, but somebody else isn't deciding how to help somebody else when they're really not helping, because giving somebody money in that way, if they're going to control their lives, isn't helpful. That doesn't elevate people out of poverty anyway. Like, it just doesn't. So we need to give people not only access, but opportunity.
Opportunity, exactly.
If I can,
that's what it needs. This equal thing in the world, it needs to be equal opportunity. You can't have equal outcome. We are all at a different place wherever we're at in our world, and and those are the outcomes of our doing. But so anyhow,
so listen, if I can step back just for a second and maybe caution, one of the reasons why we collectively are into crypto is because we don't trust where the government is in the dollar, and our mindset's in one spot, right? I'd be cautious and I'm not accepting it. I'm very reluctant to accept the CBDC system. A lot of us are, but I'd also be cautious in listening to rumors and innuendos and not really knowing what the direction is going to be, and them taking our money and not giving us one for one. I don't know if that's really out there, but we're already in a mindset of we don't trust, and that's one of the reasons why we do crypto. But at the same time, though, I don't necessarily. I'm more of a wait and see and be proactive and say, I don't want this, and be like DeSantis and contacting your congressman and contacting the governors, and depending on what state you live in. But as far as like, don't live out of fear. Continue to go down the cryptocurrency route, and hopefully they don't take our Bitcoin like they did our gold in 1930.
Right.
That's concerning, right?
Well, they're going to at some level, but I mean, I think we're also optimists. We're in crypto. It can go away at any moment, but we're still there. Like, we don't trust, and yet at the same time, we're probably the most trustworthy people on earth because we jumped in the boat. We're in crypto.
Yeah. Yeah. Brandy, go ahead. You had your hand up a second ago. Appreciate that. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, most of the things that I would like to mention were actually, interestingly, were mentioned by Dr. B. So that was actually great. But I just want to add something about CBDC, that the easiest way for whoever who implements it to make it really successful is poverty. Like, coming from a third world country, if you don't have money, if you don't have resources, you'll do whatever they tell you to do. So if anything, COVID was a lost opportunity for whoever was planning on implementing CBDC. They already missed the golden opportunity, because they could have just said, they could have just created a policy saying that anyone who accepts this as a payment can encash it to whatever federal government we have. So they missed that part. But to go back to that idea that poverty is the key for them, and you can see this. You can see this happening pretty much in major cities all over the country. Like you go to San Francisco, you go to LA, and you see tents and tents. And not only that, people who are actually working can even afford a decent apartment in certain places of the country. So what's the key there? Just imagine if there's so much people impoverished, and all of a sudden here comes the superhero and say, hey, you know what? We have this new CBDC. You can use it to get an apartment. Boom. And if merchants will be required or just have an agreement with whatever entity that, hey, you're a merchant, you accept my CBDC, I'll take that for your tax return. I'll accept it for a tax return. I have partnership with these businesses. I don't know, they sell oil, they sell grains. They'll accept my CBDC. Just my thoughts about it. And again, looping back to the concept of poverty. And then I think it was Michael who did mention that equality is equal opportunity. It's like that meme circulating on Facebook about these three characters watching a soccer game. It's about having the opportunity, because if you just give everyone the same thing, it's not fair. It's not fair for that guy who did it right, who complied with the necessary paperwork to, whatever, to do the hours, do the study, as opposed to someone who just decided to, waste their high school life or college life, or didn't work and just wait for someone to help them out. Yeah, granted, they're probably on the streets, but and again, I don't want to judge anyone, but we have to be accountable to our decisions.
Exactly. Good. Excellent. Hey, Ken, good to see you in there. Go ahead. I thanks for the links you've been putting up there. I've been copying those over to the Google Doc, and I added the link to the Google Doc in the comments of the event page for today. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, I just wanted to give us some historical context of what we're going through now. Like somebody mentioned, back in the 30s, they confiscated all the gold. I don't know how they actually physically did that, but they did it. I guess there's maybe like a census bureau coming by, you're knocking on your door. But I've had some pretty flaky Wi-Fi today. That's why I missed some of the conversation.
No worries. Glad to have you with us. And looks like Dev B and Dusty joined us here as well. Welcome, guys. And Elaine, you were unmuted. Did you want to jump in? Have any comments? I didn't hear anything there. Yeah, and Chris had a good point about being cautious on what we hear on these things. I mean, with social media and all these things, any crazy theory can get around the world in 15 minutes these days. But is there any, I look at it more as what can we do to prepare? We don't know what the option is, if the option is going to be A, B, or C going down the road, whether that's 10 years or 20 years from now, but how can we best prepare for that or potential problem issue kind of thing?
But don't rely on mainstream media because they're all captured.
Yeah, that's why I like how much, seeing in YouTube and these other guys and gals throwing up news and sharing what they're seeing in the country. And you see some of these protests happening. You have people on Twitter, posting videos 20 seconds later, which is great on that.
Prepare by buying Bitcoin.
Exactly.
Well, and to me, that's the ultimate answer because it's universal around the world. Nobody controls it. We don't have to worry about, Saudi Arabia has to sell their oil for dollars because, the US is controlling it or that kind of thing. It seems like we have the answer there. Dr. B, thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next time, and you can always catch the recording too. Yeah, it seems like we have the answer, especially with the Lightning, layer 2 on top of Bitcoin. When I saw that a few years ago, it was like, boom. I mean, that's the answer. I mean,
Brad, I do have a question. We all have some, we all have some Bitcoin, right? My thesis in the very beginning was that I would hold it, and then when it got to 250 or 500K, I would sell it, get the fiat, and then do whatever I'm going to do with that. But listening to the discussion today, and this has been on my mind prior to this, is maybe that's not my thesis any longer. Maybe my thesis is to hold it when it gets to 250 or 500 or whatever number, 500K, whatever it gets to. But the key is where can I spend that?
right.
Right. Right now, you can spend fiat anywhere. You can spend US dollars anywhere. So when you're talking about preparedness, one of the things that's critical to this is that, like Brandy was saying, I think was, do you accept my CBDC for oil or grain or whatever it may be? I mean, who are the people, who are the merchants that now accept Bitcoin as payment? So I know Dish TV, for just one last little thing, Dish TV has accepted Bitcoin for at least the last 5 years as payment. There's actually a button. Well, there used to be. I haven't looked at it in a while because it's just automatic. But there used to be a button on there to pay in Bitcoin, and that was one of the first major. Everybody knows who Dish TV is, right? So we need more of that.
Absolutely, because it may come down to that if CBDCs are there, and obviously Bitcoin is still going to be there unless they shut down the internet type of thing, which that would be probably worse than a banking collapse kind of thing. But yeah, maybe it comes down to what everybody accepts. And so, maybe Elaine has a bag of oranges that I want to buy to, feed my family. And I go to Elaine and say, what payment will you accept? And she's like, well, I'll accept, silver coins or Bitcoin or Litecoin, or whatever crypto that you might want to accept. And then all of a sudden, we're exchanging in that type of currency, and then she gets the Bitcoin and she goes to purchase gas for her tractor to help harvest those oranges, and she's not going to spend that CBDC stuff because she doesn't have it. She spends Bitcoin, and hopefully there's a big enough market that would we'd be able to take care of most of our needs with a non-controlled type of currency. I've heard that, and yeah, sorry, Chris, I heard that, but I've heard that there's a group of, I guess ranchers, we call them, in Texas that supply beef, that they've gotten together and said, hey, we're going to accept Bitcoin. So when this thing goes to heck, you can still buy, 2 pounds of beef from us for Bitcoin and that kind of thing. Go ahead, Chris.
So you guys can hear me right?
Yeah.
You have to look at, you may never be able to spend it. If you look at the ban on gold and the outlawing of gold, it took 40 years. Look at Bitcoin as being a generational thing. I look at it as being for my kids, not necessarily for me, because that's how long it's going to take. And they could today say, you know what, it's a threat, and they've already done this. They've already said that cryptocurrency is a threat to the US dollar, and we're going to outlaw it, and you can't have it. And you're going to have to hide it. And you hide it for 40 years or whatever, however long it takes, because they banned gold for 40 years. And so whenever they don't ban it, it'll be worth probably a lot more, because by that time, obviously, what is it, 110 years until the last Bitcoin is going to be mined?
Right. So would they ban it? Are you thinking the US would ban it?
US. It would be a US. It's already been
Okay.
declared a threat by the if you look at the intelligence community, they've already said that cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is a threat to the US dollar, a threat to the United States. And
Wh-
that's why there's a push on this choke point 2.0, that they're trying to get it out of the US. Obviously, look at Coinbase, looking elsewhere.
Right.
There might be a point where you might not be able to get it, the cash or fiat for the crypto that you own.
So then our option would be traveling to China and living the high life in a
Or another
nice
country.
nice hotel. Right. All right, right. Another country,
You look at
whether
European
it's
Union. I mean,
right.
they're coming down with policy, and they've established a law that now it looks like it's reasonable. Maybe the U.S. will go down that road, hopefully, but there might be a point where a year, 2 years, they might not. So you just have to hold on to it. Might not be able to buy anymore. I'm not saying that it's going to happen. I'm just saying
Right, right.
mentally, you have to think of it as being a generational thing, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, I was hoping that we'd have these discussions and, what if this, what if that, what if, now maybe we go to El Salvador because they accept it. What
Right.
it's like, hey, all the Bitcoin folks are going to El Salvador for vacation because they can, spend it there, and they can't spend it in Costa Rica or
Right.
Venezuela or the Caribbean, or wherever, that type of thing. So that's where that market influence comes into play.
Then El Salvador becomes quite a bit more powerful than they are right now.
Wouldn't that be a hoot?
It would
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Chris, just if I could, one other thing is that when you talk about, things that we hear on the internet, I completely agree with you. A lot of stuff you see on the internet or you hear on social media is complete BS. I understand that. But look at what they do with our tax dollars now, right?
Yeah,
So that's
true.
my impetus for saying that.
Yes.
I mean, I heard that somewhere else, but that behind the scenes, that's what's in my mind, is that they take our tax dollars now. And
Yes.
Randy said the same thing. You can't just give people money, and that's
Right.
what they think they can do. They can just give people that. If you have no responsibility and you're going to get something free, you're just going to sit on your butt.
But see, that goes aside from cryptocurrency, put aside all that. That's where everyone sees we're going, because that's the what's the social environment that across the board, not just financially, but across the board. That's the fear that we see, and it's obviously slapping us right in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ken. You had your hand up.
Yeah, I just posted a link to a YouTube video I watched yesterday about how to make sure you have a 0.01 Bitcoin to be a millionaire in the future, how to be in the top 1%. So I made sure last night I bought enough Bitcoin that I have 0.01.
Very good.
Not to get to 0.03. I'd rather have 3 million and 1 million.
Kenneth, that's a very scary future, though.
Yeah, that's true, Brandy.
But it could,
to think that Bitcoin, I saw a guy the other day said Bitcoin's going to go to 65 million, right? Now this is like 10 or 50, 30, 35. And I thought, oh my gosh, I mean, I would love to have it go to 65 billion or 65 million. But on the other hand, can you imagine the destruction of of life as we know it now. You can't even imagine what it would be like if Bitcoin and went to that kind of level. That's the double-edged sword, is that if Bitcoin does go to some crazy $1 million number, the dollar is no longer anything, and everything that you own in dollars is worth zero.
When you say
Bitcoin's
double, I
worth
sort of have a different concept in my mind.
Well, go ahead and share. Don't tease
ahead.
us.
The word of God, word of God is a double-edged sword.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. That's crazy. I was looking at that back to the central bank tracker. I zoomed in, which I finally found in the upper right corner. You kind of zoom in there, because I had heard, again here the whole hearing thing, that in the Caribbean they had actually launched some I thought it was one CBDC for there's a group of islands or countries. I think they call them like the Eastern Caribbean something, and they have a current, a regular currency instead of the dollar, that's, used across those 13 or 15 countries. But I did see that in Jamaica, they've launched, according to the site, and then in the Bahamas, they've launched what they call the sand dollar. Chris, do you know anything more about that as far as how prevalent that's being used?
I think it's being used a lot. I think it's from what I understand, it is active, and I haven't heard anything bad about it, but I do think that it's being used.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be interesting I'm going to definitely read up more on that, just to kind of see where they're at. Because there's, like we talked about, Africa and some of these other underdeveloped countries, that they don't have PayPal, they don't have Venmo, they don't have Zelle. So all of a sudden something comes out and boom, that's their way of conducting business. And like Dr. B talked about, we're already getting used to these digital or electronic currencies, and we're just doing it on our phone. So, if we're used to doing it on our phone, whether it's by PayPal that I transfer money to Chris, or whether it's a Lightning wallet or whatever, the general public, that's what they see is, oh, I can just have it in this wallet and send it over to him and get that bag of oranges or whatever. So it's be interesting to see what comes out of these small developing countries, because there's more of a need for them to develop this, because we already have these other options. And yeah, I'm really anxious to see what comes out of the Lightning network. Brandy, have you worked with Lightning at all? It's been 3 or 4 years since I saw it being used, and I thought, hey, this is the solution. But then I haven't seen much adoption since then. I've heard there's been problems with, the kind of the software and the payments and the channels and all this kind of thing. But it seems like that makes a lot of sense, rather than some no-name currency we never heard of coming to fruition and it takes over for, daily transactions. To me, it makes more sense that we would use something related to Bitcoin. People know what that is and would be, in my mind, more apt to accept it. If you went up to, a merchant at their store and say, hey, would you want to take payment by Bitcoin? And they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of that. But if you say, hey, do you want to take XYZ coin? They're like, oh no, I've never heard of that. What, who the heck even has that? That doesn't make as much sense. So to me, the Lightning Network seems like that on-ramp or bridge to getting a bunch of people to adopt and use in their daily lives. Now, obviously the price going up and down presents its own challenges, as far as that goes. Any thoughts there, since you've been a little more into it than most of us?
Well, as far as the Lightning Network, it's really just another application which holds all that information and then eventually spits it out on the blockchain. And with that being said, I think the biggest challenge we have with Bitcoin is most people don't necessarily want to sell their Bitcoin, or most people don't actually want to accept Bitcoin. The ones who want Bitcoin don't want to sell it because they all think like us. They want to keep it. right? And if you don't want to use your currency, that actually is bad for it, because now it becomes a speculative asset. Like, I'm gonna hold it. That's counterproductive, because now like, you don't have the velocity of that transaction,
Right.
which is why my group and I were thinking that, hey, you know what, if you will have your cryptocurrency in a country wherein they will treat it as an asset and hold it, and that's the only country who uses it, then it's not gonna be producing the best result. But if you will put it in a country or a region wherein they will use it as their bank and they will actually consume it, and this is actually one of the projects we're working on, that in the Philippines, our cryptocurrency will be used to purchase discounted rice. So people will use that currency to purchase discounted rice. They will buy it, not because they want to hold it, because they don't have money to hold, but they will buy it because it's like a membership card. It's like Costco. And they can go to like a rice dealership partner and they'll say, okay, 1 kilo of rice is like at $100. If you buy it with PBC, or that's the name of our currency, it will be like $80. And that's what we don't see with cryptocurrency right now, or at least Bitcoin. No one is using it as a currency, as a medium of exchange. And what that does is, it kind of is like, good and bad. Good for the holders, but in the same token, we will not see it used as, you cannot go to Starbucks to buy crypto or buy coffee with Bitcoin, because they're just too afraid that after they sell it or after they accept it, the price of Bitcoin will either go down. Going up is fine, but if it
Right.
goes down, just imagine the impact on the businesses.
Hey, Brandy, that's why, in my opinion, Bitcoin isn't a cryptocurrency. It's an asset like gold.
Yeah.
You don't go to Starbucks to buy a coffee with gold.
Yeah.
You use currency, and it depends on digital currency. I don't know. I think at this point in our journey, Bitcoin, some might say Ether, but Bitcoin specifically is more of an asset. And that's why even the federal government recognizes it as an asset versus a currency.
I definitely agree with you on that. Like, Bitcoin kind of evolved on its own from its original intent, because the guys who put this together, I don't know who they are, but they were like, okay, this will be the currency, or like the online payment system and all of that. We're kind of a little too far from that. Maybe just like what you guys were saying, maybe in the future, after we've mined all the coins, maybe it will settle down. But for now, it's pretty much like gold. And I also want to bring this up. Somebody asked a while ago, I'm not sure if it's Brad, what should we do? What should we do to prepare for CBDC? I think this is not just to prepare for CBDC, to prepare for what the government is doing with our money in general. What we should do is, we should have land. Like, you don't have to like do a crazy investigation about it. Just look at what the top guys are doing. They're buying land. The biggest landowner is Bill Gates. Amazon is buying land, and they know it's not gonna, you're not gonna have that anymore. So that's what we need to do. If we can get like a couple of acres, and then you can build like some form of self-sustaining place there. Next thing you know, I have chickens. So if eggs price goes crazy, you have a chicken which runs around, and you're good. We have to be more self-reliant, just like how how people did it back in the past. There was no grocery store. There was no Ralph's back in the past.
Right.
People grow their stuff.
Right. And then they would trade, just like, you might trade your eggs for Elaine's oranges.
Yep.
I tried in the last couple of years to grow some vegetables, especially cantaloupe, in my backyard, and it just didn't work out, unfortunately. But I was trying to do that to become self-sufficient, at least, not for all of my consumption needs, but at least if I had a few things that I could eat for 3 or 4 days because the grocery stores went down or, the system went down. I mean, even if could you imagine if the Visa credit card, debit card, MasterCard system went down for 6 hours, what would happen? And yeah, yeah. So that's kind of the preparation. And I love your point about land, and I would kind of broaden that to any hard asset, which to me is something that you can use to produce income, whether you rent it out to somebody else that's going to farm there, or even like, I've heard Warren Buffett, buys like railroads. It's like, well, heck, railroads are an asset that people are going to need to move goods from one place to another. And, yeah, you can use a trucks to do that, or you could use airplanes, but, trains are probably going to be around and be necessary for a while. I don't know, Ken, did you still have your hand up? I wasn't sure if you were trying to jump back in. I saw your camera go off. But want to hear from anybody else? Susan, Dev, Elaine, guys, jump in here too. Oh, Gabe, yeah. Okay, I guess not a whole lot. So kind of to boil it down, is there anything we can do this afternoon to prepare other than buying land and trains? Oh, Dev unmuted. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, the potential, what I see, one of the thing is crypto is good, but crypto has a lot of ups and downs. So it will go up to say $100,000, and then it will come down to $10 or $12. So the thing is that this gyrations, because it is not backed up by all the ETFs and all of these things are backed up. There is no backing. So when it goes down, it is actually the play book of all the Chinese and Koreans. They do that. So it is under the playbook of the Chinese and Koreans at this point. So it will go up. Definitely, it will go up. It will go to 65 or 100,000, and then it will come down to $10. So this is how this will go on. Every 5 years, it will come down to $10. So you have seen that earlier. If you see the crypto winters, 2017, 2019, all of these things, whether it is 2 years or 5 years, it will be there. But one thing is the technology behind the crypto is great. And that's what is blockchain technology is being used everywhere now. So, and one thing US is doing and every country is doing is going into the digital money, rather than physical money. So that will actually allow for Fed to track where the money is going and to track people who are doing the money laundering or things like that. So this is what I think. I may be wrong. So thank you.
Yeah, no, good. And we discussed all the downsides of the digital or crypto, I'm sorry, central bank digital currencies at the beginning, and pretty much, we're all against them. And, there might be a good thing here or there, but there's 100 bad things. So I think we're all in agreement on that. Okay. Any other questions? If not, we'll call it a conversation and move on to next month. Anybody else had anything you want to throw in or question?
I just wanted to talk. Brandy had said something about the stability of Bitcoin, and we had talked about that last Sunday, about the fact that people don't mind spending dollars because tomorrow a dollar is going to be worth $1. I mean, maybe it's going to be worth hundreds of percent less, but you're not going to spend $100 today and worry that it's going to go to 125 tomorrow. Where right now we do kind of worry about that with Bitcoin. Bitcoin needs to find a stable number, 100,000, 500, a million, whatever, and kind of hover in that area. And then people would be much, much more willing to spend it. Because you're talking about pizza day next week or 2 weeks from now, Brad. Well, how do you think that fellow feels? 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 Domino's pizzas. I mean, that guy would literally be worth I don't know, a few
I
billion,
think hundreds.
$1 billion, right? I mean, you know, that guy regrets that pizza. No pizza tastes that good.
Right. Well, and that brings up the question is there a coin out there other than a stable coin that people would use for daily, transactions, means of exchange kind of thing? Or is it like, oh no, crypto, it's going to go up, so I'm not going to spend it. And if that's the case, then that's kind of puts a kink in the whole thing. As Brandy was saying, if people aren't adopting it, then it's kind of, it's worthless, other than a speculative asset kind of. That's like kind of chicken and the egg kind of thing. I see it.
It really is, because Bitcoin won't really reach its zenith until it is adopted by the masses. Until you've got 10, 15, 20% of the masses doing it, until my mom and your sister and the mailman start using it every day, or using it on a regular basis to make payments for stuff, you're not going to get that zenith where we expect it to go someday, right? And the world not falling apart to make it get there, right? I mean, you have to get adoption, but you can't get adoption, like I said, double-edged sword. You can't really get the adoption if it's going to be, the other day, did anybody hear that Bitcoin had a spike on like one of the exchanges to $57,000?
Oh no.
It spiked to 57,000, and then within, I don't know, minutes, seconds, it came back down. It was a liquidity issue, and on one of the exchanges, Bitamex or something like that. But that kind of thing scares people, because I bought something yesterday with 10% of it, let's just say, and then the next day it cost me 3,000, and then now a few days later or a few months later, it's worth 6,000. So Brandy was right, and that's what I was talking about the other day.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I got a question for everyone. Like, why are you not spending your Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think like we've talked about, we think it's going to be going up in the future.
It's a generational speculation for better future from my kids, not me.
Yeah. So, and yeah, I think
Accumulation, baby.
yeah,
What's that, Ken?
Accumulation, baby.
Yeah.
That's the phase I'm in.
Good. Well, this is my thought about why you guys are not spending your Bitcoin. Because you don't have to. You don't need to.
Well,
right?
that's a good point. I mean, that's certainly one of the issues, or one of the reasons why I'm holding it. But like I said, my original thesis as to where it was going to go, and it was an investment. As a lot of people, Brad's been in it longer than this. I've been in it since July 2017, so we're coming up on 6 years, right? My original plan was 5 years, and so obviously we're past that. So, but I hold it because, like Chris said, it's a generational thing, right? But it's also, for me, was an investment. And like Ken said, little accumulation along the way. I've mentioned before that whenever we have a big spike down, I'll buy another 2 or 3% here and there, right? So, and that's how I got to where I'm at now, is that in the beginning, well, I didn't buy 2 or 3% in the beginning, because you could buy 10% for $250, right? When it was 2,500, or $600 when it was 6,000. So, but yeah, I hold it primarily because I expect it to be much higher. So for me, it's more of an investment, but there is that element, obviously, of spending it at some point in time. So that is the double-edged sword. We got a lot of double-edged swords today, apparently.
That's a good term.
True.
There's less than 9% of Bitcoin to be mined, for one thing. So that's going to make it very rare. And I believe that Bitcoin is going to go up to the moon. Maybe not 60 million, but 65,000 by the end of the year.
Okay, let me put out a scenario and see if we can come up with some good answers. So 12 months from now, we're all using a true cryptocurrency for our daily transactions. Buying gas, buying the Starbucks like we talked about, maybe even getting paid by our employer in crypto. which coin are we using? And what steps, what had to happen between now and 12 months from now for that to happen?
Who wants to go first?
I think you're unmuted. Go for it.
I'm also accumulating Cardano.
Okay, but
Like the future's unlimited for that also.
well, answer my question though. Is how do we get there, and which coin are we using? Because at some point, we'll just use Starbucks because they're huge. That, you know, if Starbucks was accepting coin X, there'd be a heck of a lot of adoption of coin X. You know,
This is what I was talking about earlier. When the major G2 or G7 country accepts it, that's when you're going to get real adoption and you're going to get real price appreciation. Brad, maybe how you get there is, like you said, somebody like a Starbucks, an Apple, an Amazon. Imagine Amazon accepting Bitcoin as payment. I mean, all of a sudden, people are buying millions of things every day off of Amazon with Bitcoin.
but if nobody wants to spend their Bitcoin, which I'm totally in agreement with that, and so that's why I think there needs to be another coin. But is that, you know, with Litecoin? I mean, there's been speculation forever that Litecoin was going to be the means of exchange coin, and we haven't seen, from what I can tell, squat out of Litecoin, and I've been disappointed. But what would it be USDT because it's, you know, it's stable coin?
I think there's a flaw in the question. I don't think it's going to be any kind of cryptocurrency because you're negating the fact that there's power and it needs to be centralized. And cryptocurrency really, unless you talk to the SEC, is not centralized. So it'll be a coin that the federal government has. It's a Fed coin.
Let me throw one other thing out that hasn't been talked about. The group of us here, we all know about Bitcoin and what it's doing, where it's going to go. But there's a lot of people, hundreds of millions, a few billion people that don't know anything about Bitcoin, and they're not immersed in the idea that Bitcoin's going to go to 100,000 or a million or whatever. And they just look at Bitcoin as a way to pay for something, like a Visa card or something, or a Venmo or something. We just send it. So if there's millions of people using it, not thinking that it's going to go up tomorrow or down tomorrow, and they just use it because they're just, you know, ignorant of the fact that it could go up, you know, that could be one way, Brad, that we get to that point 12 months.
Or they don't care. They don't care, Michael.
Yes. Yeah,
they don't care because they
whether
need
it
to
goes
get
up
something.
or down, right?
Yeah. So going back to what Brandy you mentioned about in the Philippines being able to buy the rice for a discount. So do you feel that's what is that what it took to get people to adopt and start using your coin there? Or was that your strategy, or how did that come to fruition?
Well, at the end of the day, it all goes back to making money. It all goes back to the business, right? Like the only reason you've mentioned it, the only time we can see mass adoption of Bitcoin if Starbucks started accepting it. This is the problem I see with Bitcoin. What's the market capitalization of Bitcoin like right now?
Not even one, like 600 billion or, you know,
600 billion.
Something,
okay.
something like that. Ballpark.
600 billion.
Sure.
That's a good chunk of money, right? 600 billion. But we shouldn't even call that market capitalization. The way I understand market capitalization is someone has a power to wield that economic power, 600 billion worth. But imagine, and again, this also go against the cryptocurrency maximalist, because what I'm trying to say now will violate the first fundamental of cryptocurrency, which is if someone has the power to wield that 600 billion, and that entity's job is to create companies which will offer a service, and in theory, that's what we're doing in the Philippines. We're And the good thing about being here in the US and opening it in the Philippines is we have more impact there. The reason why we don't see mass adoption here in the US or in other, should we say, first world country, is it's not relevant to them. It's only relevant to few people. Why is it relevant to few people? Because they are in the trading business, because they are in the investing business. But there are really very few people doing that. You just go to LA, not a lot of people are trading unless, you know, they're in the, I don't know, those new mobile apps, you know. But what we're trying to do is we are creating businesses in the Philippines which are relevant to everyday people. And if you're creating a profitable business in the Philippines, in this case, a rice dealership, you'll never go wrong with a rice dealership because people will always buy that. And we did that because it's relevant. So the next time someone goes to our store and they say, hey, why is this price lower? Or how can I buy it at the discounted price? We tell them you need to have a cryptocurrency. You need to have this PVC crypto. Now, whether we make money in the process of selling that cryptocurrency is irrelevant, because at this point, we are at the point wherein we want more people using the product. And eventually, there will be more people using it. So the way I look at it is it's impossible or almost impossible for, at least in the near future, for Bitcoin or other similar cryptocurrency to be like commonly available, because all that money is held by different people with different goals, different ideas. They cannot just put that 600 billion together and create like one holistic strategy. And in the Philippines, that's what we're doing. We're creating that holistic strategy that, okay, we're going to sell these cryptocurrency. And every time we sell that cryptocurrency, we'll put a business together and have that business, you know, generate some revenue.
So part of your strategy was to create those businesses in addition to launching the coin?
Yeah, because you cannot convince someone. You cannot just go, like in the Philippines, there's a huge mall. And this mall is actually one of our targets. It's called the SM Mall, all right? It's one of the biggest malls in the Philippines. You cannot just walk in there and say, hey, use our cryptocurrency. They'll say, nope. But imagine if we have rice dealerships on every major cities in the Philippines, and I go to the owner of that company and say, hey, we have this infrastructure built already. And you know what? We're partnering with this company and they will use our system as a money remittance system. When they see that there's already an existing infrastructure, plus the fact that it's backed by something, I know this is not the topic for this, but our cryptocurrency is backed by gold. And eventually that gold backing will be 1:1. But the only way you can do a 1:1 gold backing is if you have these businesses who will donate. And these businesses, we own them. We run these businesses, we make them effective. 20% of their revenue, like these are almost nonprofit. They're for profits, but part of their mandate is donate 20% of their earning to the gold backing. And just imagine, even if you just have a cryptocurrency which has 1 crypto to 1 milligram of gold, now you will start to have stability.
Right.
And
right.
every time somebody buys that crypto, of course you will have earning on the spread. That money goes back to the main company. 20% of that goes back to the nonprofit, which holds the gold. And the cycle propagates, and it just keeps growing and growing.
Okay, so in your example, are there any rice dealers that are accepting it, or are they only ones that are accepting your PVC, the ones that you've launched?
There is a rice dealer in the Philippines which is accepting it, and I own it.
Okay.
So it's a proof of concept.
Okay.
But what we're trying to do is we want people to use the coin. We want them to say, hey, okay, I'll take it. No matter how they decide to take to secure their PBC or their coins. They
Okay.
literally can just go to the store and say, where can I get this coin? Oh, you'll buy it from me. All right. You may or may not charge them for the purchase for as long as they use it.
Okay.
And that's the idea behind it.
Okay. So you're kind of using the discount as a motivation to buy it on there, which is great. I mean, there's always got to be a reason for us to do something different because, we're creatures of habit. We do the same thing unless we're given a better, option kind of thing. So,
Especially if it's relevant for you, because you're going to eat that.
right.
You're not going to buy the coin because you're hoping that tomorrow it's going to rise in value. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just proves that it has its own function for everyone. And it is what it is. Like on our end, we who like live here in the US or maybe other countries who are into the investing side of the cycle or the system, we will invest our money and wait for returns. But there are those, just like Michael mentioned, millions, if not billions of people who do not care. They just are happy that this infrastructure exchange exists for them to conveniently pay for something.
Right. No, and that's what I'm trying to figure out how we're going to get there. So Ken, you had your hand up. Go ahead. Hopefully you have the answer for us.
I do not have the answer, but I did put a couple of links to YouTube videos from the channel Plot 11. Very interesting and very well done documentaries on Bitcoin. That should answer a lot of the problems about how we're going to get Bitcoin to be more invasive in our societies.
Okay. Those last two were both documentaries.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just going to kind of label them here accordingly.
And
Okay.
the last one is what they used at Insights to actually have part of the beginning, one of their recent trainings is to show that video, the second one.
Okay, so you had three. So the first two are the Bitcoin documentaries, and the last one is on Insights.
No, the last two are Bitcoin.
Oh, okay.
The video before that, I've forgotten what I put in there, but let me look.
It looks like mega rich, top 1%, top 13%.
Yes.
So what should I label that one as?
Oh, the last two are the Bitcoin documentaries, but the first one was how to get to 0.0 and be in the Bitcoin and be in the top 1%.
Okay, cool. Okay, thanks, Ken, for those
welcome.
links.
I gotta
Cool.
go. Thanks.
Okay, we'll catch you next time. Thanks for
All right.
joining us. Okay, go ahead, Michael, and I think we'll call it good here. And all right. Any last minute thoughts? Elaine, Gabe, anybody else? Susan, we haven't heard from. Okay, we will call it a day. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for the good conversation. I'm still looking for that 12-month answer. So if you got something, you can feel free to email or we'll bring it up next time, or we'll just wait and see what happens.
Brad, you gave the answer, my friend. When some major corporation like Starbucks, McDonald's, Amazon says we're going to accept Bitcoin, that will open the floodgates, because all those other companies, all the top 500 Fortune 500 companies, are not going to want to miss out on that. They're going to see that as a brand new way to pay, and that all these Maximus like us are going to end up spending more and more on Starbucks or McDonald's or Amazon or whoever. That is an answer for you, at least from my perspective. You already nailed it, my friend.
Okay. Well, and I thought we could do that with Lightning. But like I said, I've been disappointed that it hasn't happened yet.
Well, that's the system. That's the system on which it's going to work. But
right.
You have to have major entities. You have to have that buy-in. It's like what we've been talking about. You have to have the adoption from major corporations. You can't just have it from, Bob and Jim's
burger stand. Yeah, exactly. Deb, do you want to jump in here before we call it a day?
I just have a question about other things, so nothing to do with the discussion that is going on. but and thank you for your help. I did that, the connection that you did for me, the Binance and the automated, you know, crypto buying and selling. So the problem is that Binance is requiring a lot of different things when I transfer it to the account. Maybe I can actually directly send a what do you call this money transfer to the account, right? I can do that also.
Okay. Yeah,
Can you do
we
that?
can talk a little more offline about that, but you bring up a
Sure.
good
We can
point.
talk about offline about that.
Yeah,
If you can hold on, if you are here, we can actually talk about that after this meeting.
okay. Yeah, I've got to run some errands. Maybe I'll give you a call from the car or something.
Okay.
But
Why
you
don't
bring
we
up a
do that?
good point that we're seeing limitations or choke points put in that, hey, you can't transfer this from this bank, or you can't do X with your funds. And I'm thinking, wait, those are my money. I should be able to do anything, legally allowable kind of thing. And we're seeing some blockades, which is not cool.
Brad, can I add to that on Binance?
Please, yeah.
Binance, everybody has to be aware of Binance. They might be leaving the US due to the securities. So they're under investigation. So you have to be careful, because what they're doing now is putting limitations. If you're using your debit card, they're not accepting it. It's only through ACH. So Binance is going to be leaving within this year.
And that's Binance.us that we've
Yes,
been
not
able to
US,
use.
that's
Right,
correct.
right.
So anybody that has funds, just be aware of that.
Yeah, and another good reason not to leave funds on an exchange unless we're actively trading them, kind of thing. So don't get caught.
And the other thing too with Binance is, if you buy a coin now, it's a 7-day waiting period.
Before you can before you can
If you
transfer.
buy a coin, yeah, to withdraw it.
Now, is that even if you've had funds sitting in there for a year?
I don't know about that, but if probably
Okay,
it's a standard operation though.
It seems to be the issue was that if you transferred, say, $1,000 from your bank to Binance.us, they wouldn't, you could buy a Bitcoin, you could buy Ethereum, you could buy whatever you want, right away, but you couldn't transfer that Bitcoin to another exchange or to a wallet or anything like that for 7 days. That's the way I know it's been working that way, at least for probably a year. But once that 7-day passed, you could then do what you want and move it however you want. Or is that what you're seeing, or is seeing something a little different?
No, it's happened to me.
Okay.
Just recently, yeah.
Okay. And was that on newly transferred funds that were just, transferred to the exchange?
To the wallet.
In Binance.us?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you for letting me know.
Sure.
Brad, why don't you give me a call? We can talk.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank
All right, guys. Thanks again for joining us and the input. And again, that link to the Google Doc is in the comments of the event page, and hope to see as many of you here in person in a couple of weeks at me and Ed's, and the next rest of you online here in a month or so. And I'll obviously get that posted, and we'll talk about something good. Take care, everyone.
Thank you guys. Bye.